On my daughter's 35th birthday, she slapped me in the face in front of 200 guests and screamed, "Dad's gift is trash, worthless." Then she pushed me toward the door as if I were a stranger. I said nothing. I simply left the place I used to call home. A few hours later, as I wandered the streets thinking my life was over, a luxury car stopped beside me, and a powerful man appeared. He came forward, gripped my hand, and said, "Let me help you." My daughter believed she had broken me. She had no idea that in just 3 weeks everything would change. Hello everyone, I'm so glad you're here. Before we dive into this story, help me out with something. Drop a comment below and let me know where you found this video, YouTube homepage search. Or did a friend recommend it? Every comment helps me understand you better. Also, a heads up. While this narrative includes creative elements crafted for storytelling and insight, any resemblance to particular individuals or places is unintentional. What matters most is the message you'll take away. The valet attendant looked at my 2008 Camry the way you'd look at a stray dog at a country club. Behind me, Mercedes sedans, BMWs, and Teslas waited in the circular driveway of my daughter's Paradise Valley mansion. I handed him the keys and tried not to notice his expression shift from polite professionalism to pity. I clutched the gift box tighter. Lavender wrapping paper, the color my late wife loved, with a white satin ribbon I'd tied myself that morning after 3 attempts. My hands had been shaking. She'll love it, I told myself. I saved for 6 months. The mansion rose before me like something from a magazine. Spanish colonial architecture, terracotta tiles catching September sunlight, bougainvillea cascading over stucco walls. 6,000 square feet of success I'd helped pay for during her college years, back when she still called me Dad, without that edge in her voice. String lights crisscrossed the courtyard in geometric patterns. A 3-tiered fountain burbled in the center, surrounded by cocktail tables draped in cream linen. Beyond the crowd, Camelback Mountain rose against a pink and gold sky. 200 guests in designer clothes held champagne flutes, laughing at jokes I couldn't hear. I spotted her immediately. Andrea stood near the entrance, greeting arrivals with practiced charm. 35 years old and already a VP of marketing. Her emerald green Oscar de la Renta dress probably cost more than I spent on groceries in 3 months. Diamond earrings caught the light makeup, flawless. She was beautiful. She was my daughter. And when she saw me, her smile froze for exactly 1 second before rearranging into something polite and distant. "Dad, you made it." No hug, no warmth. Just those 4 words delivered like she was greeting a delivery man. "Wouldn't miss it, sweetheart," I said. "You look lovely." "Thank you." She turned to the couple behind me, matching Rolex watches, and her voice transformed into something animated and genuine. "David, Sarah, I'm so glad you could come." I stepped past her into the courtyard. Business elite, society friends, colleagues. I recognized maybe 3 faces. I found a spot near the fountain and stood holding my gift box like a life preserver. My gray suit, the same one from my wife's funeral 8 years ago, felt too loose. I'd lost weight since then. Lance knew. Margaret Campbell, my neighbor of 20 years. The only person here I actually knew. "Margaret, hi." Relief washed through me. "How are you holding up?" Her expression was kind, but concerned. "I'm fine, just proud of Andrea." She squeezed my arm gently, then drifted away. An hour passed. Then another. I watched Andrea work the crowd like a politician. Confident, radiant, beloved. She laughed, hugged friends, posed for photos, clinked glasses, and I stood in the corner in my 20-year-old suit, wondering why I still felt like I was waiting for permission to be here. The music stopped around 9:30. "Ladies and gentlemen, the birthday girl would like to say a few words." Andrea stepped into the spotlight. "Thank you all so much for being here tonight. I'm so lucky to be surrounded by such incredible people. But first, let's see what surprises you brought me." A man handed her a large silver box. Inside was a Hermes Birkin bag in caramel leather. Oh my God, David, you shouldn't have. She hugged him. The crowd applauded. Phones rose to capture the moment. Next, Claudia gave her a spa retreat certificate. $3,500. Then a champagne gift basket. More applause. More photos. Finally, Andrea's eyes found me. And last but not least, Dad, come on up. 200 pairs of eyes turned toward me. I walked forward, my shoes clicking on tile. I handed her the lavender box. She unwrapped it slowly. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a Cartier Tank Française watch, stainless steel with white dial blue hands leather strap. The same watch her mother had pointed out 12 years ago, saying Andrea would love it someday. I'd saved for 6 months. Andrea stared at the watch for 3 seconds. Then she looked up at me, her expression ice. A used watch, Dad. The courtyard went silent. Ma, this is what 6 months of your pension bought. This is worthless antique junk. I can't even wear this with my wardrobe. Gasps scattered through the crowd. Andrea, it's the one your mother said you liked. My voice shook. Cartier Tank, just like... I said I wanted a Santos, not a tank. You never listen. And this is used. Did you buy this from a pawn shop? No, Andrea, it's brand new. The certificate is 6 months, and this is all you managed. Her hand swung before I registered the movement. The slap cracked across the courtyard like a gunshot. My head snapped left. Pain exploded across my cheek. I stumbled backward, 64 years old, and unsteady, my hand shot out to catch the cocktail table. The champagne glass shattered. Sharp pain tore through my palm. A glass fragment embedded near my thumb. I hit the tile floor hard. The gift box lay beside me, the watch spilled onto the ground. 200 people froze. No one moved. No one spoke. The only sound was the fountain still burbling. Then Margaret Campbell pushed through the crowd. Andrea, what is wrong with you? Andrea didn't flinch. Stay out of family business, Margaret. Margaret knelt beside me, pressing a linen napkin against my injured hand. The fabric darkened immediately. Lance, no, she said quietly. Lance, look at me. Behind me, Andrea's voice rang out bright and false. Let's continue the party, everyone. Sorry for the drama. The band started playing again. Conversations resumed. Someone laughed. Margaret kept pressure on my hand. She leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. Lance. This isn't the first time, is it? I didn't answer. But when I finally met her eyes, I knew she saw everything I'd spent 18 months trying to hide. In 64 years, I'd been struck twice before. Once in a bar fight when I was 23. Once in a car accident at 40 airbag broke my nose. But I'd never been struck by someone I'd raised. Someone I'd loved more than my own safety. That kind of hurt doesn't live in your body. It lives somewhere deeper. The Cartier box still sat on the gift table where Andrea had left it, lid open. She hadn't even bothered to close it. I would learn later that the slap had nothing to do with the watch. It was about something I'd done 2 weeks earlier. Something I'd never done before in 35 years of being her father. I'd said no, but in that moment, sitting on the tile floor with Margaret Campbell kneeling beside me, all I knew was the ache in my hand and the weight of 200 pairs of eyes. Most of them looked away. Margaret helped me to my feet. My legs felt unsteady, like I'd aged another decade in 10 minutes. The napkin she'd wrapped around my injured hand was soaked through. She kept her arm around my shoulders, and when she turned to glare at Andrea, her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. When Andrea, he's your father. Andrea didn't even look at her. She stood near the fountain, champagne flute in hand, chin lifted in defiance. He embarrassed me on my birthday, in front of my guests. Claudia stepped closer and whispered something I couldn't hear. Andrea's expression flickered for just a second. Uncertainty, maybe. But then she shook her head and turned back to the crowd. Let's continue the party, everyone. Sorry for the drama. The word drama landed like an insult, as if I was the one who'd caused a scene. 3 couples near the courtyard exit exchanged glances. I watched them set down their drinks and slip away without saying goodbye. No confrontation, no questions. Just a quiet retreat into the night. The rest stayed, 6 or 7 business associates shifted uncomfortably but didn't move. I understood why. Andrea was a VP. She had connections influence the kind of power that could make or break a career. A group from the church Andrea used to attend stood clustered near the bar whispering. Shocked, maybe. Disturbed, but not disturbed enough to intervene. The rest, 180 people, give or take, just stood there, frozen, waiting for someone else to act first. No one did. The DJ signaled to the band. Music started again, hesitant at first, then louder. Waitstaff resumed circulating with trays. The party moved forward like I'd never been there at all. Margaret's grip on my arm tightened. Come on, let's get you out of here. She guided me through the crowd toward the parking area. People parted to let us pass, but no one met my eyes. I heard someone's phone buzz, a text message being sent. I imagined the words, "You won't believe what just happened at Andrea's party." By the time we reached the valet stand, my hand was throbbing with each heartbeat. The valet brought the Camry around, quickly avoiding looking at my face, at the napkin-wrapped hand, at Margaret's furious expression. She opened the driver's side door. I eased into the seat. The dome light illuminated the empty passenger side. I'd forgotten the Cartier box. 6 months of saving. $4,800. Left on a table like garbage. Margaret leaned down. "Lance, should I call 911? Your hand." "I'm fine. Just need to go home." "This isn't okay." What she did. "It's family business. I'll handle it." "No, it's assault." And I saw everything. I finally looked at her. Margaret Campbell. 55 years old. Lived 2 houses down for 20 years. Brought casseroles after my wife died. The closest thing I had to family besides the daughter who just struck me in front of 200 people. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for being there. Call me tomorrow, promise me." I nodded. I wouldn't call, I knew that even then, but she didn't. I pulled out of the driveway and onto the street. In my rearview mirror, I watched the mansion grow smaller. Music and laughter drifted out into the night. The party continued. I turned onto Lincoln Drive. The road stretched dark and empty ahead, winding through the desert hills of Paradise Valley. Sparse streetlights cast long shadows. The temperature had dropped into the 80s, and the air smelled like creosote and dust. My right hand gripped the steering wheel. My left hand, wrapped in Margaret's napkin, rested on my lap. Each heartbeat sent pain pulsing through my palm. I wasn't driving home. Not to my house in Tempe. Not to a hospital. I was just driving. No destination. No plan. Just the road and the darkness and the question I couldn't answer. Where do you go when the person who's supposed to love you treats you like garbage? I glanced at the passenger seat. Empty. The Cartier box was still at the party. Andrea hadn't even kept it. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was worthless. Maybe I was worthless too. A red light ahead. I stopped. I looked down at my wrapped hand, then up at the rearview mirror. For the first time since the slap, I really saw myself. 64 years old. Gray hair thinning. Tired eyes. And on my left cheek, already darkening into a bruise, the clear outline of Andrea's hand. The tears came. Not loud, not dramatic. Just quietly, the way things break when no one's watching. Tears of shame. For believing she'd love the gift. For thinking tonight would be different. For spending 6 months saving money. I could barely afford to lose all for a daughter who looked at me like I was nothing. For the first time in 8 years since my wife died, I let myself break. Quietly coming apart in a 16-year-old Camry at a red light in the middle of nowhere. The light turned green. I wiped my face with my good hand and kept driving. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't go back to that party. Couldn't go back to who I was before tonight. Couldn't pretend anymore that things were okay between us. She really doesn't love me. The thought settled into my chest like a stone. I was still driving, injured, hand-aching face wet with tears I'd held back for 8 years when I noticed the headlights in my rearview mirror. A car. Large. Dark. Expensive. Keeping pace with me. At first, I thought nothing of it. Lincoln Drive wasn't empty. But then it pulled closer. Closer. Until I could see the gleam of chrome in my rearview mirror. The unmistakable silhouette of a luxury vehicle. A Rolls-Royce, following me. And I felt something shift from shame to fear. My first thought was carjacking. You hear about it on the news. Someone follows you from a nice neighborhood, waits until you're alone, takes everything. My second thought was darker. I didn't care anymore. If someone wanted my 16-year-old Camry and the $43 in my wallet, they were welcome to it. Chase Harrington was supposed to be in London. Andrea had told me 3 weeks ago, business deal, big client, wouldn't be back until next month. But here he was, pulling a $250,000 car alongside mine on a dark Arizona road. The Rolls-Royce accelerated past me, then pulled into a gravel turnout ahead, one of those hiking trailhead parking areas that emptied after sunset. Hazard lights blinked on. Red. Amber. Red. Amber. My foot hovered over the gas pedal. Every instinct screamed trap. But another vehicle, a dark gray SUV, was pulling in behind me. I was boxed in. My injured hand throbbed. I could run, put the Camry in reverse, floor it. But my body felt too heavy, too tired, too defeated. I slowed, pulled into the turnout, left the engine running. The driver's side door of the Rolls-Royce opened. A man stepped out, tall, late 30s, dark overcoat. He moved quickly toward my car, both hands raised, palms out. "Mr. Griffin Lance, please don't drive away." I knew that voice. Chase Alkins. He ran the last few steps to my car, opening my driver's side door, crouching to eye level. His face was flushed, urgent eyes wide with concern. "Lance, are you okay? Your hand, let me see." I pulled my hand back. "Chase. What are you? You're supposed to be in London." I flew back tonight as soon as I heard. Heard what Andrea did at the party. I saw it. How could you see? Because I've had people watching for months. He gripped the door frame. "Please, get out of the car. Come with me, I'll explain everything." Behind him, 2 more figures emerged. A woman from the Rolls-Royce mid-50s charcoal gray suit, carrying a leather briefcase. A man from the SUV mid-40s jeans and leather jacket, camera bag over his shoulder. Chase gestured toward them. "Lance, this is Evelyn Cross. She's a lawyer, one of the best in Arizona. And this is Detective Marcus Cole." I stared at them. "I don't understand." Evelyn spoke, her voice calm and measured. "Mr. Griffin, we know you're confused, but you're not safe right now. Physically, you need medical attention. Legally, you need protection. And emotionally, you need to know what your daughter has been planning." The word planning hit me like cold water. "What are you talking about?" Marcus shifted the camera bag. "Mr. Griffin, I need to show you something." He pulled an iPad from his bag and turned it toward me. The video started. I recognized the angle immediately. Looking through gaps in the landscaping at Andrea's courtyard. Telephoto lens. Clear view of the gift table, the fountain, the guests. Clear view of me. The video showed me handing Andrea the Cartier box. Her opening it. 3 seconds of silence. Then her face twisting into contempt. Her voice through the speaker. "A used watch, Dad. This is worthless antique junk." Then the slap. The sound was sharp. My head snapped to the side. I stumbled backward. Glass shattered. I fell. 200 people frozen. Margaret rushing forward. The video ended. I couldn't speak. Watching it from outside made it real in a way I hadn't fully processed. "You filmed that," I said quietly. Marcus nodded. "I've been surveilling Andrea's house for 6 weeks. Tonight I witnessed assault. This footage is evidence." Evelyn stepped closer. "Mr. Griffin, We've been investigating your daughter for 4 months. Investigating for what? Chase's voice was tight. Fraud, financial exploitation, conspiracy, and tonight assault. She's my daughter. I know. Chase's voice softened. But Lance, Andrea has been planning to steal everything from you. Your retirement, your house, your independence. She's been setting it up for months. We have evidence. And tonight she crossed a line we can't ignore. I looked at him. Chase Harrington. The man who'd married my daughter 7 years ago. Why are you telling me this Andrea is your wife? Chase stepped closer, his expression raw. Because you're more of a father to me than my own ever was. Because what Andrea's doing is wrong. And because I won't stand by and watch her destroy the one person in her life who actually loved her unconditionally. The words hung in the air. Desert sounds filled the silence crickets, the distant howl of a coyote wind through creosote bushes. Will you come with us? Let us help you. I looked around, at my Camry, at my injured hand, at Chase's face showing no trace of deception, at Evelyn and Marcus standing respectfully back. I'd been handling things alone for 8 years, since my wife died. 8 years of telling myself I was fine, that asking for help was weakness. Maybe it was time to let someone help. Where are we going? Relief flooded Chase's face. Somewhere safe. I'll explain everything. I promise. I turned off the Camry's engine, opened the door and climbed out, legs unsteady. I looked at my car one last time. 16 years old. Scratched paint. Everything I had. Marcus approached. I'll have your car towed to a secure location. Keys. I placed them in his palm, handing over control, choosing trust. Chase opened the rear door of the Rolls-Royce. I'd never been inside a car like this. Leather seats, polished wood trim, everything pristine. I slid inside. Evelyn climbed in on one side of me, Chase on the other. The door closed with a solid thunk. Marcus walked back to his SUV. Both vehicles pulled onto Lincoln Drive, heading north into the darkness. For the first time since my wife died, I wasn't alone in the dark, but I had no idea where we were going, or what Chase was about to tell me, or that by sunrise everything I thought I knew about my daughter and my entire life would be shattered, worse than any glass on any patio floor. I'd never stayed anywhere with a star rating in my life. When my wife and I honeymooned 40 years ago, we'd splurged on a Motel 6 in Sedona, $39 a night, free coffee in the lobby, a view of the parking lot. Our anniversary trips were camping in Flagstaff with a 2-person tent and a Coleman stove. The idea of a 5-star resort was something I'd seen in magazines but never imagined experiencing, until Chase Harrington pulled up to the Four Seasons Scottsdale at Troon North and said, "This is home, for as long as you need it." Chase had booked the casita 3 days earlier, before the party, before the slap, before any of this. He'd known. Somehow he'd known I'd need a place to disappear, and I realized he'd been planning my rescue the same way Andrea had been planning my exploitation. The difference was, one of them was doing it out of love. The Rolls-Royce pulled into a private entrance, bypassing the main lobby entirely. Resort staff waited near a golf cart, 2 attendants in pressed uniforms who nodded at Chase like they'd been briefed. No questions, no check-in desk, just quiet efficiency. We rode through the property in silence. Desert landscaping lined the paths, saguaros lit from below palo verde trees, casting shadows, the scent of night-blooming jasmine heavy in the air. The resort sprawled across the base of Pinnacle Peak, low buildings designed to blend into the desert pools, glowing turquoise in the darkness. The casita sat at the far edge of the property, private and secluded. The attendants unlocked the door, handed Chase a key card, and disappeared. I stepped inside. The space opened before me like something from a different world. Open-plan living room with leather furniture, Southwest art on the walls, a gourmet kitchen with granite counters I'd never use. Beyond the living area, 2 bedrooms, a king bed in the master, a guest room with twins. The bathroom had a rain shower and a soaking tub big enough for 2 people. But what stopped me was the far wall. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the valley. Through the glass, I could see an outdoor patio with a private pool, an outdoor shower, a stone fireplace. And beyond that, the lights of Scottsdale spreading across the valley floor like a blanket of stars with the dark silhouette of Pinnacle Peak rising against the night sky. I walked to the window, pressed my bandaged hand against the glass. "I can see the stars," I said quietly. Chase stepped up beside me, hands in his pockets. "You haven't been able to see stars in a while, have you?" I shook my head. "No, I haven't." He didn't ask what I meant. He already knew. The last 8 years had been about surviving, not living. I hadn't looked at stars in a long time. A knock at the door broke the moment. Chase opened it. An older man stood in the hallway, silver hair, kind eyes, carrying a leather medical bag. "Lance, this is Dr. Alan Brooks," Chase said. "He's going to look at your hand." I blinked. "You arranged a doctor at midnight." "I arranged everything." Dr. Brooks extended his free hand. His grip was gentle. "Mr. Griffin, I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. Let's see what we're dealing with." He gestured toward the dining table. I sat. He pulled out a chair beside me and carefully unwrapped the linen napkin Margaret had tied around my palm. The fabric stuck to the wound. I winced. Dr. Brooks examined the cut, turning my hand gently. "Glass laceration, about 1 inch long. Not too deep, but it needs stitches. You're lucky another 1/4 inch, and we'd be talking about nerve damage." Lucky. The word felt strange. He cleaned the wound with antiseptic that stung worse than the original cut. Then came the local anesthetic, a needle, a pinch, a spreading numbness. 5 stitches, small and precise. Dr. Brooks worked in silence, his movements economical and sure. When he finished, he wrapped my hand in clean white gauze. Then he leaned back, studying my face. "You also have bruising on your left temple," he said. "Did you hit your head when you fell?" I touched my face with my good hand. There was a tender spot near my hairline. "I think so. I don't really remember. I'm ordering a CT scan tomorrow morning. Precautionary. Head injuries in your age group, we don't take chances." "I'm fine, really." "You're getting the scan, Dad." The word hung in the air. Dad. Chase said it so naturally, like he'd been saying it for years instead of for the first time. He stood near the kitchen counter, arms crossed, expression firm but gentle. Neither of us acknowledged what he'd just said, but I felt it settle somewhere in my chest, warm and unexpected. Dr. Brooks packed up his supplies. "Keep the stitches dry for 48 hours. No showers, sponge bath only. I'll be back tomorrow after your CT scan." He pulled a small prescription bottle from his bag and set it on the table. "Mild pain medication. Take one if you need it. Try to get some sleep." He shook my hand, the good one, and left. The door clicked shut. Silence filled the casita. I looked around. Evelyn sat on the leather couch, her briefcase open beside her, a file folder 3 inches thick resting on her lap. Marcus stood near the Windows laptop balanced on the dining table screen, glowing. Chase pulled out the chair across from me and sat down, elbows on his knees, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Somewhere in the chaos of the last 2 hours, someone had brought me clothes. A hotel robe hung on the back of the bathroom door. My Camry was gone. My old life was gone. I sat in a 5-star resort in a borrowed robe with a bandaged hand, and a man who'd just called me Dad for the first time, and I had no idea what came next. But I knew I couldn't run anymore. Couldn't pretend I didn't need to know. I looked at Chase, at Evelyn, at Marcus, at the file folder and the laptop screen and the evidence they'd been carrying all night. "Tell me everything," I said. My voice was quiet, but steady. Firm. Maybe the first firm thing I'd said in months. Chase didn't move for a moment. He just looked at me with something that might have been pity or sorrow or both. Then he glanced at Evelyn and Marcus and nodded. Evelyn placed the 3-inch file on the coffee table between us with a soft thud. Marcus turned his laptop screen so I could see. Chase leaned forward. Hands clasped, and his voice when he spoke was careful and deliberate. 4 months ago in May, I noticed something wrong. $25,000 missing from my joint account with Andrea. And that's where this started. Chase leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on some point beyond the window. Then he began. 4 months ago, May early morning, I woke up to an alert on my phone. Bank notification. Large withdrawal from joint account. $25,000. Gone. When I asked Andrea about it over breakfast, she didn't even look up from her coffee. Charity donation, she said, for the women's shelter downtown. I asked which shelter. She said she'd find the receipt. She never did. I watched him as he spoke. His hands were clasped loosely, but his jaw was tight. This was a man who'd spent 4 months carrying secrets. I wanted to believe her. But I'm a businessman, Lance. I've built 3 companies from the ground up. I know when numbers don't add up, and $25,000 doesn't just vanish for charity without a paper trail. He paused, glanced at Marcus, standing near the window, then back to me. So I did something I'd never done before I stopped trusting my wife, and I hired someone to find out why. Marcus gave a slight nod but said nothing. Chase continued. I checked myself, called around to every women's shelter in the valley. None of them had received a major donation in May. Not from Andrea. Not from anyone matching her description. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. When I pressed her, she changed her story. Said she'd given cash, that they don't always issue receipts. Chase shook his head. But nonprofits always document large donations. Andrea knows that. She used to work in nonprofit fundraising. She knows exactly how it works. So you knew she was lying, I said quietly. I knew something was wrong, so I hired Marcus, ex-LAPD detective, now private. I gave him one instruction: find out where the money went, discreetly. Marcus spoke for the first time, his voice low and professional. Took me 2 weeks to trace the $25,000. It was deposited into a separate account Andrea had opened 6 months earlier. Chase didn't know it existed. How much was in it? I asked. $73,000, Chase said. The 25 I'd seen was just the latest deposit. There were others, smaller amounts, all from our joint account over 6 months. I just hadn't been paying attention. The room felt heavier. Evelyn sat on the couch across from me, watching Chase with calm focus. Chase kept going. By the 4th week, Marcus had started following Andrea. Surveillance. He followed her to 3 different law offices over 2 weeks. He looked at me. Elder law. Conservatorship. Guardianship cases. My mouth went dry. Andrea was meeting with lawyers about how to declare someone legally incompetent, how to take control of their finances, their healthcare decisions, their entire life. Marcus stepped away from the window. By the 5th week, I found the psychiatric appointments. Dr. Patricia Morales. 4 visits in June. Andrea was requesting evaluations for a family member. Medical records requests. Competency assessments. She was building a case. Evelyn said, her voice calm and factual. To have you declared mentally incompetent. It's a legal process. She needed documentation. A doctor's statement. Proof that you couldn't manage your own affairs. I thought about the conversations Andrea and I had over the past few months. Her questions. Do you remember what day it is now? Did you take your pills this morning? You seem confused lately. Little comments, subtle, planting seeds. Chase saw the recognition on my face. By the 6th week, Marcus had connected the dots. Conservatorship lawyers, plus psychiatric evaluations, plus a secret bank account. It's a pattern. Her father, I whispered. Me. Chase confirmed. Silence filled the casita. I confronted her, Chase said. Late June, at home. I asked her straight out, the $25,000. It didn't go to charity, did it? He looked at me, and I saw the weight of that conversation still sitting on him. She was caught off guard, said she'd needed it for something else. I told her I knew about the separate account. I watched her face change. She got angry, asked if I'd hired someone to spy on her. He paused. Then I asked her why she had a secret account. What did she say? She pivoted. Said it was for you, that you weren't doing well, that you were forgetting things, getting confused, that she'd been worried and didn't know how to tell me. I felt the lie like a slap. I asked her why she was meeting with conservatorship lawyers, why she hadn't talked to me first. Chase's voice hardened. She got defensive, said I was spying on her. I told her, if your dad needs help, I want to help. But this secret accounts lawyer's psychiatric evaluations, this doesn't feel like helping. What did she say? She said, I don't have to explain myself to you. He's my father. Then she walked out. The image hung in the air. Andrea, my daughter, walking away from her husband because he dared to question her. Chase sat forward. After that conversation, I realized that wasn't the woman I married. So I called Marcus, told him to keep investigating. Over the next 2 months, July and August, the investigation deepened. Chase brought in Evelyn, a lawyer specializing in elder abuse. They obtained legal warrants for email surveillance, hired a forensic accountant, ran a background check on Dr. Morales and found complaints and malpractice settlements. And Marcus started watching me. I didn't know you were being followed, I said. Well, that was the point, Marcus replied. Chase wanted to verify Andrea's claims. If you really had dementia, maybe her actions made sense. But you didn't find that. No. I found a 64-year-old man living alone, maintaining your yard, driving without issue, going to stores, the library, completely lucid, no signs of cognitive decline. Marcus paused. No, you were isolated, sure, but you weren't confused. You weren't incompetent. Chase's voice was quiet. By August, Marcus told me your father-in-law doesn't have dementia, but your wife is trying to make it look like he does. I closed my eyes. I had 2 choices, Chase said. Confront her again and risk tipping her off, or wait. Build a case strong enough to protect you legally. I chose to wait. 2 weeks ago, Andrea had brought conservatorship papers to my house, asked me to sign, said it would make things easier, and for the first time in years, maybe the first time ever, I'd said no. 2 weeks ago, I said slowly, she brought me conservatorship papers. I said no. Chase leaned forward. What did she do? She got angry, said I was being difficult. I told her I wasn't signing anything. I looked at Chase. She left, didn't speak to me for a week. Then she invited me to the party. She hit you tonight. Chase said, not because of the watch. She hit you because you said no. Because for the first time, you wouldn't give her control. The truth of it settled over me like a heavy blanket. What else did you find? I asked. Marcus crossed the room, opened his laptop, and turned the screen toward me. Everything, he said. Marcus turned his laptop toward me. The screen showed a spreadsheet, rows of numbers, columns of dates, categories highlighted in yellow and red. At the top, in bold, Andrea Griffin Financial Analysis, prepared by David Reeves, CPA. And underneath, discrepancies identified $253,400. I didn't understand what I was looking at. Not yet. But Marcus's expression told me this was bad. Mr. Griffin, this is Andrea's financial profile. David Reeves, a forensic accountant I hired in July, built this from credit reports, bank statements, and public records. What you're seeing is the reason your daughter has been planning fraud for the past 4 months. He clicked to the first tab, Income and Spending. Andrea's base salary as VP of Marketing is $185,000 a year. But look at her annual spending. He pointed to a column on the right, $280,000 a year. I stared at the numbers. How is she spending more than she makes? That's the question we asked. Marcus clicked to the next screen. Credit cards. Personal. 4 accounts, all in Andrea's name alone. American Express, $24,000 balance. Visa, $18,500 balance. MasterCard, $16,200 balance. Store cards, $14,800 balance. Total $73,500. Chase, sitting beside me, spoke quietly. I didn't know about these. Marcus nodded. She opened them using a separate mailing address. Statements went to a P.O. box in Scottsdale. I looked at Chase. She hid this from you for how long? At least 2 years, Chase said. His voice was flat, tired. Maybe longer. Marcus clicked again. But the credit cards aren't the main problem. This is. The screen shifted. Cryptocurrency trading, 2022. I saw a logo I vaguely recognized, Coinbase, an account in Andrea's name, and a timeline that made my stomach drop. January 2022. Deposited $180,000. Where did she get that money? I asked. Cash advances from the credit cards, plus withdrawals from joint savings accounts with Chase. She moved it all into cryptocurrency. February through April 2022 invested in Luna Classic token. May 12, 2022. Portfolio value $127. Total loss $179,873. I stared at the screen. She lost almost $200,000. In 3 months, Marcus said. On a speculative cryptocurrency that crashed during the Terra Luna scandal. Biggest crypto collapse in history at that point. Chase's voice was bitter. I didn't find out until I hired Marcus. Marcus leaned back. So by May 2022, Andrea was in serious financial trouble. She'd lost $180,000 in crypto. She'd accumulated $73,000 in credit card debt. And she was spending $95,000 more than she earned every year. Added up, and she was in a hole of approximately $253,000. The number stared back at me. $253,400. What did she do? I asked. She started looking for a way out. Marcus's eyes met mine. And that's when she started looking at you. He clicked to a new tab. Lance Griffin Asset Summary. My name at the top. My entire financial life laid out in rows and columns. 401k retirement account, $340,000. Primary residence Tempe, AZ, paid off $280,000. Monthly pension $2,800. Monthly Social Security $1,900. Total assets $620,000. Total monthly income, $4,700. I felt my throat tighten. You know how much I have? Marcus's expression didn't change. Public records for the house? Pension and Social Security are standard for your career? Retirement account is an estimate? I'm a detective, Mr. Griffin. This is what I do. He paused. And Andrea had access to some of this information. She knew you had savings. She knew you owned your house outright. To someone drowning in debt, you looked like a life raft. Evelyn spoke, her voice calm and precise. Andrea's plan was straightforward. Obtain conservatorship over you. Once she has legal authority, she can sell your house $280,000. Withdraw from your 401k $340,000. Control your pension and Social Security $4,700 a month. She could access over $620,000 almost immediately. That would erase her debts, cover the crypto losses, and fund her lifestyle for years. I looked at the numbers. $620,000. My entire life. 40 years of work. Reduced to a target. But if she needed money, I said slowly, I would have given it to her. She's my daughter. If she just asked. Chase cut me off. Asking means admitting she has a problem. Admitting she gambled and lost. Andrea doesn't ask for help, Lance. She takes what she needs and justifies it later. Marcus clicked to another document. Bank account activity, March 2024. Hannah, she already had practice taking. 6 months ago, she convinced you to add her name to your checking account, didn't she? I remembered. March. Andrea had come to my house, said it would be easier if she could help with bills in case of an emergency. Yes, I said. She said it was in case I needed help. Marcus scrolled through transactions. Over the next 8 weeks, she withdrew $40,400 from that account. ATM withdrawals. Checks made out to cash. Wire transfers to her Coinbase account. The withdrawals were highlighted on the screen. April 3rd. April 10th. May 5th. I asked her about it, I said. She said I'd spent it on home repairs. On the roof. She said I'd forgotten. Chase's jaw tightened. You didn't forget. She stole it. And then she made you think you were losing your mind. The weight of it settled over me. Heavier than anything I'd felt tonight. She'd made me doubt my own sanity. Evelyn leaned forward. The bank account was a test, Mr. Griffin. Andrea took $40,000, and you questioned it. She realized she couldn't simply take everything you'd notice, so she needed legal authority. A conservatorship gives her that authority. I thought about 2 weeks ago. Andrea sitting at my kitchen table with a stack of papers. Conservatorship petition. A pen in her hand. Just sign here, Dad. It'll make things easier. If I'd signed those papers, I said quietly, I'd have given her permission to take it all. You would have given her legal immunity, Evelyn said. Marcus closed one window. But you didn't sign. You said no. And that's when Andrea started to panic. That's when she decided to humiliate me, I said. At the party, in front of 200 people, Chase shook his head. Or she was punishing you for daring to set a boundary. I sat back. It was past midnight. I looked at the numbers on Marcus's screen one more time. $620,000. And I thought about Andrea tonight. Emerald green dress, diamond earrings, champagne glass raised. She wasn't celebrating her birthday. She was celebrating what she thought she was about to take from me. I wasn't her father, I said quietly. I was a solution to a problem. Chase's voice was gentle. I'm sorry, Lance. I didn't respond. I just stared at the screen and felt something shift inside me. Anger. Cold, quiet, growing. The next document Marcus pulled up wasn't a spreadsheet. It was an email. The subject line read, Dad's Evaluation. Sender Andrea Griffin. Recipient Dr. Patricia Morales. Date June 15, 2024. And the moment I started reading, I felt something inside me go cold. Not angry cold, but the kind of cold you feel when you realize someone you love has been planning your destruction with the same care most people plan a vacation. I'd never heard the name Patricia Morales before that night, but apparently she'd written a 9-page psychiatric evaluation declaring me mentally incompetent, citing tests I'd never taken, behaviors I'd never exhibited, and a diagnosis that would have stripped away my legal rights. All for $15,000. Marcus turned the laptop so I could see the screen clearly. These emails came from Andrea's personal account. We obtained them through a legal subpoena after Evelyn brought her in as co-counsel in July. The first email was dated June 15th. Andrea wrote to someone named Trish, saying she hoped the recipient was well and needed help with something sensitive. She explained that her dad, Lance Griffin, 64, had been showing signs of memory loss and confusion lately. She said she was really worried about me living alone, and asked if this Trish could do a psychiatric evaluation. She just wanted to make sure I was okay and see if I needed more support. "Who is this person?" I asked. "Patricia Morales." Marcus didn't look away from the screen. "Psychiatrist. Licensed in Arizona. Went to medical school with Andrea at the University of Arizona. They were roommates sophomore year. Hadn't been in touch much since graduation, but Andrea reached out in June." I stared at the email. It looked so normal. "Concerned daughter. Worried about aging father. Keep reading," Marcus said. He clicked to the next email. The reply came a week later, June 22nd. Dr. Morales wrote that she'd seen my father that morning at her office in Tempe. They'd spent about 90 minutes together. Cognitive tests, memory exercises, general conversation. She had to be honest. He seemed completely sharp. Scored in the normal range on all assessments. Memory was good, reasoning intact. No red flags for dementia or cognitive impairment. If anything, he seemed a bit lonely and stressed, but that wasn't a medical diagnosis. She said she knew Andrea was worried, but from what she observed, I didn't have dementia. Maybe I was just getting older and forgetting minor things. We all do that. I looked up from the screen. I never went to her office. I've never met this woman in my life. Marcus nodded. "We know. She made up the evaluation. Wrote it like it happened so she'd have documentation. That email was her covering herself so later she could say, 'I told Andrea he was fine,' but she knew what was coming next." Chase leaned forward. Andrea wasn't going to take no for an answer. Marcus clicked to the next email. It was sent 3 days later, at 11:47 at night. Andrea's tone had changed completely. She wrote that she needed this diagnosis. Dr. Morales didn't understand this wasn't just about worry. She needed documentation that I had diminished capacity. She needed it in writing. Then Andrea brought up something from their past. She reminded Patricia about sophomore year, a pharmacology final, when Patricia had cheated off another student's paper, and Andrea had covered for her when a professor questioned the identical answers. Andrea had kept that secret then. Patricia owed her now. Andrea said she wasn't asking for something crazy, just an evaluation that said what she needed it to say. Early-stage dementia, diminished capacity, needs supervision. That's it. She'd make it worth Patricia's while. $15,000. Cash or wire, her choice. She told Patricia to think about it, but not to take too long. Silence filled the casita. I read the words again, then a third time. When she threatened her, I said quietly. With something from 15 years ago, Evelyn spoke from the couch. Blackmail combined with bribery, both of which are felonies under Arizona law. Chase's voice was bitter. Andrea doesn't ask for what she needs. She finds leverage, and if there's no leverage, she makes it. Marcus scrolled to the final email in the chain dated June 28th. Dr. Morales' response was brief. She agreed. She'd write the assessment. But if this ever came back on her, if anyone questioned this, they never had this conversation. Understood. She told Andrea to send the money to her personal account, and once it cleared, she'd have the report ready in a week. This was the last time she'd do anything like this for Andrea. Marcus leaned back. She agreed. For money. Because Andrea had leverage and because Dr. Morales was desperate. He pulled up a bank statement. Transfer details showed $15,000 moving from Andrea Griffin's personal checking account to Patricia Morales' personal checking account on July 2nd. The memo line read, "Consulting services." And Andrea withdrew this from the secret account, Marcus said. She paid Dr. Morales $15,000 to commit fraud. I felt sick. Marcus clicked to the next document. Official letterhead. Dr. Patricia Morales, MD, Arizona medical license number printed at the bottom. 9 pages long. The psychiatric evaluation was dated June 22nd. It listed me as the patient. Marcus scrolled through it, slowly reading excerpts aloud. The report claimed I presented with signs of early-stage cognitive decline, likely Alzheimer's type. It said memory impairment was evident during testing, that I was unable to recall 3 words after a 5-minute delay. It claimed I exhibited confusion regarding recent events and demonstrated poor judgment in financial matters. The conclusion stated my decision-making capacity was significantly diminished. The recommendation legal conservatorship warranted to protect patient from self-harm and financial exploitation. I stood. I couldn't sit anymore. I walked to the window and looked out at the dark desert. "I never took those tests," I said. My voice came out shaking. "None of that happened." "We know," Marcus said. I turned around. "She didn't just try to steal my money. She tried to steal my mind." 12 years ago, my brother Hank and I stood in a lawyer's office reading our parents' will and said things brothers should never say to each other. Words about fairness and favoritism and money and love all tangled together until neither of us could remember what we were really fighting about. We stopped speaking that day, stopped calling on birthdays, stopped sending Christmas cards, stopped existing in each other's lives. And 3 months ago, Andrea reached into that 12-year silence and weaponized it against me. The thing about estrangement is that it creates a vacuum. And Andrea understood vacuums. She understood that when you haven't talked to someone in over a decade, you don't have a baseline for understanding anymore. You only know what someone tells you. And Andrea told Hank exactly what she needed him to believe. Marcus pulled up a new screen on his laptop. Text messages this time. 3 months ago, your daughter contacted your brother. I hadn't heard Hank's name in years. Now here he was, pulled into Andrea's conspiracy like everyone else. Our parents died 12 years ago, I said quietly. 6 months apart. The will left me 60% of the estate, about $180,000. Hank got 40%, $120,000. He was furious. Said I'd manipulated them. Had you Chase asked. I'd helped them during their final years. Paid medical bills. Helped with the mortgage. Took unpaid leave to care for them. I didn't do it for money. I did it because they needed help. But Hank saw it differently, Marcus said. Hank saw favoritism. We fought in that lawyer's office, said terrible things, and when we walked out, we never spoke again. 12 years of silence. Marcus turned the laptop toward me. Until Andrea broke that silence, the screen showed a text thread. Andrea had reached out to Hank in late July saying she was worried about me. She told him I'd been having memory problems, forgetting appointments, getting confused about dates. She claimed that last week I'd left the stove on and almost started a fire. She'd walked in, and the kitchen was full of smoke. I didn't even realize. I felt my stomach drop. None of that happened. There was no fire, no smoke. Marcus nodded. We checked. No fire department calls to your address. No smoke damage. Your stove is electric, much harder to accidentally cause a fire. She made it up. The messages continued. Andrea told Hank she'd taken me to a psychiatrist who diagnosed early-stage dementia, probably Alzheimer's. She said I was refusing help, being stubborn. She asked if Hank could talk to me, maybe coming from my brother, I'd listen. She said she was scared for me. He believed her, I said. He had no reason not to, Chase said gently. He hadn't talked to you in 12 years. All he knew was what Andrea told him. 5 days later, Hank called me. I remembered that call. July 25th, around 7 at night, Hank's voice on the other end. It's Hank. Andrea told me you're having memory problems. Dementia. She said you almost burned your house down. I told him I was fine. I didn't have dementia. I hadn't seen a psychiatrist. He'd been frustrated, impatient. Said Andrea told him I was refusing help, that I was in denial. I'd gotten angry. Told him he hadn't spoken to me in 12 years and had no right to tell me to sign my rights away to my daughter. I'd hung up. I thought he was just being Hank, I said to Marcus, still angry about the will, using this as another excuse. Andrea counted on that, Marcus said. She knew your history, she used it. The texts continued after the call. Andrea told Hank that my denial was a classic symptom of early dementia, that I had good days and bad days and he'd happened to catch me on a good day. She asked if he'd be willing to write a statement, just saying he was concerned based on what she'd told him. It would help with the legal process. Marcus pulled up an email showing a draft affidavit Andrea had sent Hank on August 1st. The document stated that Hank had been informed by Andrea of concerning cognitive decline and supported efforts to provide me with appropriate care and supervision. He almost signed it, Marcus said. Andrea called him twice, pressured him, but something held him back. He felt uneasy, said it felt wrong to sign something so official when he hadn't actually seen you. And then you contacted him, I said. Marcus nodded. Last week. Showed him everything. The emails with Dr. Morales, the financial fraud, the fake medical report. Told him Andrea had manipulated him. What did he say? He said, "Oh my God, she lied to me, about all of it." He felt sick, angry at himself for believing her. He asked me to apologize to you on his behalf, and he asked if you'd be willing to talk to him. After this is over, I stood and walked to the window. My eyes were burning. For 12 years, I said quietly. I thought Hank didn't want to talk to me because of the inheritance. But now, what if Andrea made sure we stayed apart? What if she knew that as long as we weren't talking, I had no family support, no one to check in, no one to notice if something was wrong? Chase's voice was gentle behind me. Isolation is a classic abuse tactic. My own daughter isolated me from my own brother. I turned around. Will Hank really testify? Marcus didn't hesitate. He signed an affidavit yesterday. States that Andrea contacted him under false pretenses, lied about your health, attempted to manipulate him into supporting a fraudulent conservatorship. He's willing to testify in court. I sat back down. My voice cracked slightly when I spoke. Tell him yes. Tell him I'll talk to him. When this is over. Marcus nodded. Then he closed the text thread and looked at me with something like sympathy. Mr. Griffin, there's one more thing you need to know. Something Andrea did 6 months ago. Something she spent months making you believe was your fault. He pulled up new screens, bank statements, withdrawal records, dates in March, and I felt the room tilt because I knew what he was about to show me. March, 6 months before the birthday party, 6 months before the slap. Andrea came to my house on a Sunday afternoon with 2 bags of groceries from Whole Foods and a box of Sprinkles cupcakes, the red velvet kind my wife used to make from scratch. She smiled when I opened the door, kissed my cheek, said, "I miss spending time with you, Dad." And I believed her. Because I wanted to believe her. Because she was all I had left. For 6 months after that Sunday, I lived in a fog of terror that had no name. I started keeping a blue spiral notebook by my bed, writing down everything I did, every conversation, every phone call, every dollar I spent. I checked it obsessively 3 times a day, 4 times a day, convinced I was losing my mind. Convinced that the creeping darkness my wife had feared in her final months was finally coming for me too. But I wasn't losing my mind. I was being erased, methodically, deliberately, by my own daughter. Marcus closed the text thread on his laptop and opened a new file. The screen filled with rows of transactions, dates, amounts, descriptions, all highlighted in yellow. He turned the laptop toward me. "This is your Chase checking account, Lance. March through May 2024. I leaned forward. The balance at the top read $87,400. By the bottom, it had dropped to $47,000. $40,000, I whispered. $40,400, Marcus corrected. Gone in 8 weeks. I remembered that Sunday in March. Andrea had unpacked the groceries in my kitchen, arranged the cupcakes on a plate, poured us both coffee, and sat across from me at the table where I'd eaten breakfast alone for 8 years. She'd said she'd been thinking, what if something happened to me? What if I had an emergency, and she couldn't help because she didn't have access to my accounts? She said she wasn't trying to control anything. She just wanted to be able to help, in case of emergencies. 2 days later, we sat in a Chase Bank branch in Scottsdale. The banker had walked us through the paperwork, explaining that as a joint owner, Andrea would have full access to withdraw, transfer, or close the account. Andrea had squeezed my hand. "It's just for emergencies, Dad." I'd signed. The first withdrawal happened a week later. $4,800 from an ATM in Scottsdale. Then $6,200 on a check. Then $5,500 wired to Coinbase. By the 5th week, I'd started checking my balance compulsively, watching it drop. That's when I called her. I'd told her I thought something was wrong with my account. There was money missing. A lot of money. $40,000. She'd sounded confused at first. Then her voice had changed, still sweet, but with an edge of concern. She'd said we talked about this. Remember the roof repair and the plumbing issue? I'd asked what roof repair. Her tone had shifted to something patient, almost pitying. She'd reminded me that the contractor came in April. I'd signed the contract. We'd walked through the estimate together. I'd gripped the phone, my mind racing, searching for the memory. Had there been a contractor? Had I forgotten? She'd said it was okay. This was why we set up the joint account, remember? So she could handle things when I got confused. When you got confused. The words had hit me like a fist. I'd hung up and immediately driven to the house, inspected every corner of the roof, every pipe, every fixture. Everything was fine. Everything was exactly as it had been. But the doubt had already planted itself. What if I really had forgotten? What if this was how it started? The forgetting, the confusion, the slow unraveling. That night I'd started the journal. Now, sitting in the Four Seasons casita, I stared at Marcus's laptop screen. 8 weeks, 8 withdrawals, $40,400. There was no roof repair, Marcus said quietly. We pulled the county permit records. No work filed at your address in the last 3 years. We also contacted a home inspector. He went through your property last week. Everything's in good condition. No recent repairs of any kind. Chase leaned forward. Show him the text. Marcus scrolled to a new window. A text message thread between Andrea and Claudia dated May 28th. Andrea had written to Claudia that night, laughing about how her dad totally bought the roof story. Claudia had responded in disbelief, 40,000. And he believed you. Andrea had replied that I'd called her crying, thought I was losing my mind. She'd almost felt bad, she wrote, followed by laughing shorthand. Claudia had called her ice cold. Andrea had responded that it wasn't cold, it was strategic. The conservatorship hearing was in 6 weeks. By then I'd be so confused I'd sign anything. I stopped breathing. The room tilted. Chase's hand was on my shoulder, steady grounding, but I couldn't look away from the screen. She wanted you to doubt yourself, Marcus said. That was the whole point. Take the money, make you question your memory, your sanity. By the time the conservatorship petition came, you'd be too destabilized to fight back. I thought of the journal, the blue spiral notebook. Page after page of desperate documentation, proof that I wasn't crazy, that the world was still real, that I could still trust my own mind. I wrote everything down. I said, my voice barely a whisper. For 4 months, every transaction, every conversation, I thought I was going insane. You weren't, Marcus said firmly. You were right. About all of it. Something cracked open inside me. Not relief, not vindication. Something deeper, a grief for the 4 months I'd spent questioning my own reality. Chase's hand tightened on my shoulder. When he spoke, his voice was thick. You were right, Dad. You were right the whole time. It was the first time he'd called me that. Dad. Not Lance. Not Mr. Griffin. Dad. I looked up at him. This man, who wasn't my son, but who had spent 4 months trying to save me. And I couldn't stop the tears. Evelyn Cross closed her leather portfolio. Elder financial abuse, gaslighting, conspiracy to defraud, and now we have documentation of intent. She looked at me. This is enough, Lance. More than enough. I wiped my eyes, my hand still bandaged from the broken glass. What happens now? Evelyn's expression was calm, certain, and for the first time since Andrea had struck me 6 hours ago, I felt something other than fear. Now, she said, we build justice. Over the next 3 days, Sunday through Tuesday, Chase, Evelyn, and Marcus built a case so airtight that even the best defense attorney in Arizona couldn't find a crack in it. They started by proving the one thing Andrea had spent months lying about, that I was perfectly, completely, undeniably sane. And they did it with a test I was terrified to take. The Mayo Clinic is one of the top hospitals in the country. If anyone could prove I wasn't losing my mind or confirm that I was, it would be them. And that's what scared me. Because for 4 months, Andrea had planted doubt so deep I wasn't sure anymore. What if the test showed something wrong? Sunday passed in a haze of rest and planning. Evelyn laid out the strategy over breakfast. First, we prove you're competent. Medical evaluation, top facility. Second, we gather witnesses. Third, we document everything Andrea did and create a timeline. Then we go to the authorities. How long will this take? I asked. We move fast, Evelyn said. Andrea doesn't know we're building a case. Surprise is our advantage. Monday morning, Chase drove me to the Mayo Clinic Arizona campus in Scottsdale. Inside, Dr. Helena Warren, chief of neurology, waited behind a polished desk. She was tall with gray hair cut in a professional bob, radiating decades of authority. Mr. Griffin, she said, shaking my hand firmly. I understand you've been told you have cognitive decline. We're going to test that thoroughly today. What if there is something wrong? My voice caught. Dr. Warren's expression softened. Then we'll know and we'll address it. But from what I've been told by Mr. Harrington's team, I don't expect to find impairment. Let's see. The assessment took 3 hours. Memory tests, she gave me 3 words to remember apple table penny, then asked me to recall them 5 minutes later. I repeated them perfectly. Spatial reasoning, copying geometric shapes, drawing a clock. Language tests, naming objects, repeating complex sentences. Executive function, problem-solving scenarios, pattern recognition. Attention counting backwards from 100 by sevens. I made no errors. When Dr. Warren reviewed the results, Chase sat beside me. She looked at me across the desk and said, Mr. Griffin, your cognitive function is not just normal. It's superior for your age group. She turned her computer monitor toward us. The score read 142 out of 144 possible points. And that places you in the 98th percentile for 64-year-olds. You absolutely do not have dementia. No signs of Alzheimer's. No cognitive impairment whatsoever. Whoever told you otherwise was either incompetent or lying. My throat closed. So I don't have dementia. You do not, Dr. Warren said firmly. You're cognitively healthy. I'm writing a full report. I pressed my hands to my face and cried. Not tears of shame, these were tears of pure relief. Mr. Griffin, are you okay? Dr. Warren asked gently. I lowered my hands. I've been terrified for 4 months that I was losing myself. And you're telling me I'm fine. You're more than fine, she said. In the parking lot afterward, I stopped and looked back at the building. I'm not crazy, I said aloud. Chase stood beside me. You never were. That afternoon, David Reeves called Evelyn with another discovery. He'd gone through Andrea's corporate credit card issued by the tech company where she worked as VP of marketing. He'd found $48,000 in personal expenses disguised as business over 18 months. Client dinners that were actually luxury spa days. Marketing conference travel that turned out to be vacations to Cabo. Designer handbags disguised as team-building supplies. "This is corporate fraud," Reeves said over speakerphone. "FBI will be interested since the company operates in multiple states. Wire fraud charges are possible." "Document everything," Evelyn replied. "We're adding it to the file." Tuesday brought the witnesses. Margaret Campbell arrived first at Evelyn's downtown Phoenix office, giving a written statement detailing 20 years of watching Andrea treat me poorly. She described the slap at the party, how she'd intervened, how she was willing to testify in court. Marcus had tracked down 12 guests from the party who'd witnessed the slap. Initially hesitant, worried about social fallout in Paradise Valley's tight circles, they eventually agreed to give statements. 12 people describing the same scene. The slap, my fall, the shattered glass, 200 frozen guests. Late Tuesday afternoon, Hank arrived. We met in a conference room at the Four Seasons. When my brother walked in, older now, graying his eyes red, we stood on opposite sides of a table for a long moment. "Lance, I'm sorry," he said. "I should have called you, should have verified. Instead, I believed her and I hurt you. She manipulated both of us," I said. "I'm still sorry. For the 12 years. For the fight. For all of it." "Me too." It wasn't a full reconciliation, not yet, but it was a start. Hank signed an affidavit stating he would testify about Andrea's manipulation. Meanwhile, the Arizona Medical Board had opened an emergency investigation into Dr. Morales on Monday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, her license was suspended. Her lawyer contacted Evelyn with an offer Dr. Morales would cooperate, fully testifying against Andrea in exchange for reduced criminal charges. Tuesday evening, the team gathered at the Four Seasons. Evelyn laid everything out on the coffee table, the Mayo Clinic report, showing I was cognitively superior. The financial forensics documenting crypto losses, debt embezzlement, the $40,000 theft, Dr. Morales' emails and fraudulent evaluation, Hank's texts and affidavit, Margaret's witness statement, 12 party guest statements, video footage of the slap, bank records, wire transfers, a paper trail that led straight to Andrea. "This is overwhelming evidence," Evelyn said. "Any prosecutor would take this case. Any jury would convict." "What do we do now?" I asked. "We have two options. File criminal charges immediately Andrea gets arrested, prosecuted. Or we confront her first. Give her a chance to see what we have." Chase leaned forward. "I want to confront her." "Why?" Evelyn asked. "Because I want her to know. I want her to see that she didn't get away with it." He looked at me. "And I want Lance to see her face when she realizes it's over." Evelyn nodded. We set up a meeting. Neutral location, public enough to be safe. I'll be nearby with Marcus. We confront Andrea with evidence, record her reaction. If she admits anything, we have a confession. If she denies, we go straight to police. When Chase asked, "Tomorrow, Wednesday. I'll call her, say it's about marriage counseling. She'll come." I looked at Chase, then Evelyn. "I want to be there. Not at the table, but close enough to see." That night, I slept better than I had in months. Because for the first time since Andrea brought me those conservatorship papers, I wasn't afraid of her anymore. Wednesday afternoon at 2:15, Chase called Andrea. I was sitting on the Four Seasons patio when I heard his voice through the open door, calm and steady, delivering 9 words that sounded like an invitation, but were really a summons. "Let's have dinner tonight. Just us. We need to talk." And I watched him through the glass as he listened to her response, his face unreadable, and wondered if she had any idea what was waiting for her at Mastro's Ocean Club. Andrea thought this was about damage control. She'd texted Chase twice since the party, once Saturday night saying I'd embarrassed her, once Monday, asking if they could talk when he was back from London. She had no idea Chase had never gone to London. that he'd been in Arizona the whole time, watching, building, preparing. I could hear only Chase's side of the conversation from where I sat. "Andrea, it's me." A pause while she responded. "I know, I got back early. Listen, we need to talk. About Saturday, about everything." Another pause. "Not on the phone. Let's have dinner. Mastro's, 7 o'clock. Just the two of us." I could imagine her voice on the other end, eager, relieved that he was finally engaging after days of silence. "We'll talk about all of it," he said, his tone controlled. "But face to face, will you come?" A longer pause. "Good. 7 p.m., private dining room. I'll make the reservation." She said something else. I caught the faint edge of affection in whatever words she used. "See you then," Chase said and ended the call. He set the phone down and stood there for a moment, staring out at the desert. I walked to the doorway. "What did she say?" I asked. Chase turned. "That she's sorry I had to deal with Dad's outburst. That she wants to explain. That she loves me." He paused, his expression somewhere between sadness and steel. She has no idea what's about to happen." By 3 o'clock, Evelyn had arrived with the final strategy. We gathered in the Four Seasons conference room for what she called a rehearsal. Chase sat across from her while she walked him through every step of the confrontation. "Start calm," Evelyn said. "Don't let her see emotion. Emotion gives her room to manipulate. She's spent years reading you, knowing what buttons to push. Don't give her that opening." Chase nodded. "Present evidence systematically, one piece at a time. Don't dump everything at once or she'll shut down. Build the case layer by layer until there's no room for denial." "What if she tries to leave?" Chase asked. "Let her," Evelyn said. "But she won't. She'll want to explain, to spin, to manage the narrative. That's when you listen. If she says anything incriminating, let her talk. We're recording. Everything she says is evidence." They ran through scenario after scenario. Evelyn played Andrea's role, defensive, tearful, manipulative, while Chase practiced staying controlled. Evelyn turned to me. "You don't have to be there, Lance." "I know," I said. "But I want to. I need to see her face when she realizes." "We'll seat you at a corner table in the main dining room," Evelyn explained. "You'll see them through the glass partition, but they won't see you. You'll be far enough away that you can't hear the conversation, that's safer for you emotionally. You'll watch body language reactions. Is that okay?" "That's perfect," I said. At 6:30, Marcus and a tech specialist arrived at Mastro's Ocean Club ahead of us. The restaurant was an upscale steakhouse in North Scottsdale. Marcus planted tiny cameras in the private room Chase had reserved legal under Arizona's one-party consent law, since Chase was a participant in the conversation. Audio recording devices served as backup. Evelyn and Marcus would monitor everything from an SUV in the parking lot. At 6:45, the restaurant manager seated me at a corner booth in the main dining room. My table had a clear sight line through a glass partition to the entrance of the private room where Chase and Andrea would sit. I ordered coffee I knew I wouldn't drink. My stomach was in knots. I wore a baseball cap and kept my head down, just another diner among the Wednesday evening crowd. Chase arrived at 6:50. I watched him walk past my table without a glance, heading to the private room. He sat down at the table with his back to the main dining room. He placed a leather portfolio in front of him. Inside, I knew, was an iPad loaded with evidence. Divorce papers in one envelope, a police report in another. Andrea arrived at 7:02. I saw her walk through the main dining room before the hostess led her away. She wore a white sheath dress, and her hair was blown out in soft waves. Her makeup was flawless. She moved with the confident stride of someone who believed she was about to smooth over a difficult situation, maybe even salvage her marriage. The hostess led her to the private room. Through the glass partition, I watched Andrea enter, her face lighting up when she saw Chase. She leaned down and kissed his cheek. I couldn't hear her words, but I could read her lips enough to catch the shape of them. "I missed you." Chase's voice was too low for me to hear, but his body language was neutral, controlled. He gestured to the chair across from him. Andrea sat. A server appeared, and Andrea ordered wine, probably an expensive bottle. When it arrived, she sipped it and leaned forward, animated, speaking with rehearsed brightness. She was talking about the party. About me. I could see her gestures, the way she touched her collarbone, in concern, the slight shake of her head. Then Chase moved. He leaned forward and said something, one word, maybe two. Andrea stopped mid-sentence, her smile fading slightly. Chase reached down and pulled the iPad from his portfolio. He set it on the table between them. Andrea stared at it. Her lips moved. "What's that?" And Chase responded with something that made her face go still. He turned the iPad toward her. From where I sat, I couldn't see the screen, but I knew what was on it. The frozen frame of the courtyard at Andrea's party. And in the center, Andrea's hand raised in the split second before it struck my face. Andrea looked at the screen, then at Chase. Her expression shifted, confusion giving way to comprehension, comprehension giving way to something sharper. Chase said something else. Then he pressed play. From my corner table, I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see Andrea's face through the glass partition as the video played. I watched her watch herself strike me, watched her expression change from confusion to recognition, to something that looked like fear. And I watched Chase, calm, still unmoved, as he sat across from the woman he'd married and showed her proof of who she really was. Before I reveal what Chase showed Andrea next, I need to know you're still with me. If you think Andrea deserves what's coming, type 1 in the comments. If you think this confrontation is too harsh, type 2. Your number tells me you're here, and I promise what happens in the next 30 minutes will shock you. And a quick reminder, the story ahead includes some fictionalized elements for dramatic and educational purposes. If you'd rather not continue, feel free to pause here and explore other content. Andrea watched the video of herself striking me. 47 seconds of high-definition footage from 3 angles. Detective Cole had been thorough. She watched the champagne glass shatter, watched me fall, watched 200 people stand frozen while Margaret Campbell knelt beside me and wrapped my injured hand in a napkin. And when the video ended and the iPad screen went black, Andrea looked up at Chase and said the only thing she could think to say, "That's not what it looks like." Chase had rehearsed this moment with Evelyn 6 times. He knew every response Andrea might give, every deflection, every excuse, every manipulation tactic. Evelyn had coached him. She'll deny, then deflect, then cry, then blame. Don't react to any of it. Just keep presenting evidence. And that's exactly what Chase did. "Now that's not what it looks like," Andrea said again. "He gave me a cheap gift after I threw him a huge party." I was hurt. You struck him," Chase said evenly, "in front of 200 witnesses. That's assault." "He embarrassed me. He saved for 6 months to buy you a Cartier watch," Chase interrupted. "You called it worthless junk. Then you struck him hard enough that he fell and injured his hand." Andrea's voice rose. "I didn't mean to." "Yes," Chase said. "You did." He swiped to the next screen on the iPad. Coinbase records filled the display. $180,000. Luna Classic. May 2022. Total loss. Andrea's face went pale. "How did you—" "Why, I hired investigators 4 months ago," Chase said. "After $25,000 vanished from our account for a charity that didn't exist. That was an investment. That was gambling, with money you took from our joint savings, without telling me." Chase turned the iPad toward her. "You hid this for 2 years. He swiped again. Credit card statements appeared. How $73,000 in credit card debt. 4 cards I didn't know about. Statements sent to a P.O. box. Andrea's voice wavered. "I was going to tell you." "When?" Chase asked. After you drained your father's retirement to pay them off. He displayed the conservatorship papers on screen. You told him it was just in case. It was a legal document giving you control of his entire estate. He's my father, Andrea said defensively. I was trying to help. He's completely mentally competent, Chase said. Mayo Clinic tested him, 98th percentile for his age. Andrea blinked. But the doctor said, Dr. Patricia Morales, your college roommate, you paid her $15,000 to write a fake dementia evaluation. Chase pulled up the email chain. Andrea's eyes scanned the screen and the color drained from her face. Her own words stared back at her, demanding the diagnosis, mentioning the owed favor offering $15,000. She committed medical fraud. For money. Because you blackmailed her with a cheating incident from 15 years ago. Chase showed the bank transfer. $15,000. July 2nd. Doctor, Morales' medical license was suspended yesterday. She's cooperating with authorities. She'll testify against you. Andrea opened her mouth, then closed it. Chase swiped again. Text messages appeared. You contacted Lance's brother. Told him Lance was declining, leaving the stove on, causing fires. All lies. You were building a case. You needed family corroboration for the conservatorship petition. You manipulated Hank into supporting something based on complete fabrication. Marchishan. Chase set his tone flat. You convinced Lance to add you to his bank account. Then you stole $40,400 over 8 weeks. He displayed the withdrawal records. Chuktia, when he noticed you told him he'd spent it on home repairs, he didn't remember. You made him think he was losing his mind. Chase pulled up the text exchange with Claudia. The laughing emoji. The mocking tone. Andrea saw her own words about how her dad totally believed it, about playing the long game. You gaslit your father. Made him believe he had dementia. He kept a journal for 4 months because he was so terrified of forgetting things. Andrea's eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean for him to. Yes, you did. You wanted him scared, compliant, easy to control. Chase swiped one more time. Corporate expense records filled the screen. And while you were stealing from your father, you were stealing from your employer. $48,000 in false expense claims over 18 months. He scrolled through the list. Spa days labeled as client dinners. Vacations disguised as conferences. Designer handbags categorized as team-building supplies. Your company is pressing charges. The FBI is involved because it crosses state lines. Wire fraud. Andrea was crying now, mascara beginning to streak. Chase, please. She cycled through every response Chase had anticipated. Denial, deflection, crying, blaming him for traveling too much. Desperation, we can fix this, therapy, counseling, I'll pay everything back. It's too late, Chase said. He pulled an envelope from his portfolio and slid it across the table. I filed for divorce Monday morning. These are your copies. Andrea grabbed the envelope, her hands shaking. What? No, Chase, you can't. Your fraud voids the prenuptial mediation clause, Chase said. I'm keeping the house, the cars, all marital assets. You leave with nothing. Andrea reached across the table and grabbed his hand. Please. I'll do anything. We can work through this. Chase pulled his hand away. We can't work through fraud. We can't work through elder abuse. We can't work through you systematically destroying the one person in your life who loved you unconditionally. He pulled a second envelope from the portfolio. This is from Detective Marcus Cole. Police report filed Tuesday. He read the list aloud. Elder abuse, financial exploitation, conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement, assault. Arizona State Police will arrest you within 72 hours. Andrea's voice became hysterical. You're having me arrested. I'm making sure you're held accountable, Chase said. Andrea stood her chair, scraping back. I'm your wife. Chase stood as well. He put on his jacket and looked down at her. His voice was calm, final. "You were my wife. Now you're just someone I used to know." He turned and walked to the door. "Chase, wait." He didn't turn back. He opened the door, stepped through, and let it close behind him. Andrea stood alone in the private dining room. Documents were scattered across the table. Her white dress was rumpled. Her mascara ran in dark streaks. She stared at the iPad, its screen now dark. She stared at the divorce papers. And slowly she sank back into her chair and put her head in her hands. From my corner table 30 feet away, I had watched the entire exchange through the glass partition. I couldn't hear the words, but the body language told the story. I had expected to feel anger, or satisfaction, or triumph. But what I actually felt was emptiness. A hollow grief for the daughter who had never really existed. I watched Chase walk through the main dining room toward the exit. He saw me in my corner booth and stopped. He didn't sit, just stood beside the table and said, "It's done," and I nodded, because it was done. The Arizona State Police arrived at Andrea's office at exactly 10 o'clock Thursday morning. I wasn't there. I was at the Four Seasons drinking coffee on the patio with Chase when Marcus called and said, "It's happening now." And Chase put the phone on speaker so we could hear Marcus describe what he was watching from across the street. Through a telephoto lens, Andrea being arrested in front of everyone she'd ever tried to impress. Andrea had gone to work. The morning after Chase served her with divorce papers and showed her proof of every crime she'd committed, she put on a pantsuit, did her makeup, and drove to her office like it was just another Thursday. Marcus told us later she'd been at her desk answering emails when the police walked in, like she thought she could still pretend everything was normal. Marcus's voice came through the speaker, calm and matter-of-fact. "They're going in now. 2 Arizona State Police, 1 FBI agent." I could hear faint background noise traffic, the rustle of Marcus shifting in his vehicle. And I'm walking through the lobby, taking the elevator, 3rd floor, approaching her section. I can see through the glass walls. She's at her desk. Doesn't see them yet. A pause. Police are entering her area. She looks up. Face just went white. Another pause, longer this time. Officer is speaking to her. Can't hear from here, but she's standing, shaking her head. Looks like she's saying, "Not here." I gripped my coffee cup. Officer doesn't care. Pulling out handcuffs. My chest tightened. She's in handcuffs. They're reading her rights. Marcus's voice remained steady, clinical. Employees are stopping work. Everyone's watching. She sees them looking. She's crying. I closed my eyes. They're walking her out, through the main office area. Glass walls on both sides. Maybe 200 people watching. 200 people. The same number who'd watched her strike me 5 days ago. She's trying to keep her head up, but she's falling apart. Elevator, lobby, outside. She's in the police car now. Silence. Then Marcus said, "It's done. They're taking her to Maricopa County for booking." I set my coffee down. My hands were shaking. Chase looked at me. "You okay?" he asked. I didn't know how to answer. "That's my daughter in handcuffs," I said. "That's the person who tried to steal your life," Chase said quietly. I nodded. Both things can be true. 20 minutes later, Evelyn called with the official details. 6 charges. Elder abuse under Arizona Statute Class 4 felony. Fraudulent schemes and practices Class 2 felony. Theft $40,400 from my account. Class 2 felony. Theft by embezzlement from her employer. Class 2 felony. Conspiracy to commit fraud with Dr. Morales. Class 3 felony. And assault the slap at the party, a Class 1 misdemeanor. Hunt, if convicted on all counts, Evelyn said, she's looking at 8 to 12 years. The bail hearing was expedited to 1 o'clock that afternoon. Judge Raymond Torres presided. The prosecutor laid out the case. Andrea was a flight risk. Her wealthy husband was divorcing her. She had no financial ties left. and the charges were severe. Multiple felonies, overwhelming evidence. Andrea's public defender tried. "Your Honor, Ms. Griffin has no prior criminal record. She's not a flight risk. She has roots in the community." Judge Torres cut her off. The defendant stands accused of systematically defrauding her elderly father, conspiring with a medical professional to falsify mental health diagnoses, embezzling from her employer, and physically striking her father in front of 200 witnesses. This court finds clear and convincing evidence of danger to the victim and potential flight risk given her financial desperation. Bail was set at $500,000. Andrea couldn't post it. Chase had frozen all the accounts. She had no access to money, no way to come up with $500,000. She was remanded to Maricopa County Jail. By noon, the media had picked up the story. The Arizona Republic ran a headline, "Scottsdale 5P Arrested in Elder Abuse Scheme." The article named Andrea, listed her age and position, and detailed the charges. The company issued a statement within the hour. "We are shocked and dismayed. Mrs. Griffin's employment has been terminated effective immediately. We are cooperating fully with law enforcement." By 5 o'clock, the local TV news was running the story. I was sitting in the Four Seasons casita when the broadcast came on. The anchor's voice was neutral, professional. "A Scottsdale woman has been arrested on charges of elder abuse and fraud." Andrea's mugshot filled the screen. Her hair was messy. Her makeup was smeared. Her eyes were red and swollen. She wore an orange jail uniform. I stared at the television. That was my daughter. Chase sat beside me. "You okay?" I don't know," I said. "I thought I'd feel something. Relief, anger, something. I just feel tired." "That's normal," Chase said. "Is it?" "You watched your daughter get arrested on TV," he said. "There's no normal for that." That night, Andrea was in a holding cell at Maricopa County Jail. She shared the space with 3 other inmates. One of them, a woman in for a DUI charge, asked her what she was in for. Andrea didn't answer at first. "Saw you on the news," the woman said. "You the lady who beat up her dad." I didn't beat." Andrea started, then stopped. "Me says you slapped him and stole his money, front of 200 people watching." Andrea turned away. And for the first time, I imagined the reality of what was happening started to set in. This was real. This was happening. And there was no talking her way out of it. Later that night, Chase and I sat on the patio under the desert sky. The air was cool. The stars were out. "Do you think she understands yet?" I asked. "What she did? I don't know," Chase said. "Maybe. Or maybe she's still thinking this is something she can talk her way out of. Can she?" "No," Chase said. "Evelyn's case is airtight. Best she can hope for is a plea deal." "How long would that be?" 18 months, maybe 2 years if she pleads guilty. Trial could be 8 to 12. I was quiet for a moment. "She's 35. She'll be almost 40 by the time she gets out." "She made her choices," Chase said. "I know," I said. I keep thinking about the little girl I raised and wondering when she turned into this." "Maybe she was always this," Chase said gently. "You just didn't want to see it." "Maybe." That night I dreamed about Andrea as a child. 6 years old, missing her front tooth, showing me a drawing she'd made at school. A stick figure family with "I love you, Daddy" written in crayon at the bottom. And I woke up at 3 in the morning wondering, when did that little girl disappear? When did the daughter I loved become someone I didn't know? And would I ever stop grieving for the child she used to be? I thought seeing Andrea arrested would give me closure. But watching her unravel over the next 4 weeks, losing everything she'd built on lies, taught me that justice isn't a moment. It's a process. I woke the morning after the arrest in Chase's penthouse sunlight, streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Scottsdale. My phone screen showed 47 missed calls from unknown numbers reporters, I guessed. On the kitchen counter, Chase had left the morning paper folded open. The headline read, "Marketing VP Arrested in Elder Abuse Case." Andrea's mugshot stared up at me. Orange jail uniform, hollow eyes. I folded the paper closed. Chase appeared with coffee and asked if I wanted to talk to the press. I said no. Evelyn would handle it. Week 1 moved like a slow-motion avalanche. Friday, October 11th, Andrea stood before Judge Rebecca Torres at her arraignment in Maricopa County Superior Court. 11 felony counts, 4 charges of elder abuse, 5 of theft and fraud, 1 conspiracy. 1 witness tampering added after jail officials intercepted a recorded call where Andrea had tried to reach my brother Hank, asking him to recant his statement. Bail remained $500,000. Andrea stayed at 4th Avenue Jail. Monday, October 14th, Chase's attorney filed the dissolution of marriage petition. The language was clinical fraud, irreconcilable differences, request for separate property division, no spousal support. Chase told me over breakfast that he'd removed his wedding ring the night of the restaurant confrontation. It was already over, he said. The paperwork just makes it official. Wednesday, October 16th. Andrea's employer placed her on unpaid administrative leave. By Thursday, the local news ran a 10-minute segment titled, "Daughter Accused of Defrauding Elderly Father." I declined interview requests. Chase issued a brief statement through Evelyn. Lance Griffin is recovering and grateful for the justice system. I watched the broadcast from the penthouse couch. I expected to feel vindication, maybe even satisfaction. Instead, I felt a tired kind of relief. I didn't want revenge, I told Chase. I just wanted her to stop. She has, Chase said. Week 2 brought the professional collapse. Monday, October 17th. Andrea's employer completed an internal audit. They'd discovered $48,000 in fraudulent expense claims. The company terminated her employment for cause and referred the case to the Maricopa County attorney for additional charges. Tuesday, October 18th. The Arizona State Board of Behavioral Health Examiners suspended Dr. Patricia Morales' medical license. An FBI probe had uncovered a broader Medicaid fraud scheme. Morales had billed for mental health assessments she'd never actually conducted. Dozens of other victims. Files going back 3 years. Thursday, October 20th. The social distancing began. One of Andrea's closest friends posted a cryptic message online. Sometimes the people you think you know, you don't. By week's end, 197 of the party guests had unfriended Andrea. 12 had agreed to provide formal witness statements to the prosecution. Saturday, October 22nd. A real estate appraiser visited the Paradise Valley house, 6,000 square feet, Spanish colonial architecture appraised at $1.8 million. Chase's attorney filed a motion to freeze all marital assets pending the divorce settlement. That same Saturday, Margaret Campbell knocked on the penthouse door carrying a casserole dish of homemade lasagna. She'd been my neighbor for 20 years. She'd watched Andrea grow up, and now she stood in Chase's kitchen and told me, "You're not alone, Lance." It was the first time in years I actually believed that. Week 3 tightened the legal vice. Monday, October 24th. The prosecutor's office added 2 more theft counts and 1 count of witness tampering for the jail call to Hank. Andrea's total charges now numbered 14. Wednesday, October 26th. Evelyn called with an update. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for November 18th. If she doesn't take a plea, Evelyn explained, this goes to trial in February 2025. Friday, October 28th. Andrea's public defender advised her to accept a deal. Plead guilty to 5 counts, 3 elder abuse, 2 theft. Recommended sentence 18 to 36 months. Restitution $113,400 covering the stolen money plus my legal fees. 5 years probation after release. Andrea hadn't decided yet. Saturday, October 29th. Chase moved the last of his belongings out of the Paradise Valley house. I went with him to help. The place felt hollow, echoing. In a storage closet, Chase found a framed photograph of my late wife, Andrea's mother. It had been packed away, forgotten. I took it with me. It was the first time I'd looked at her picture in months. That night, back at the penthouse, I stared at the photograph and felt an unexpected wave of grief. Not for Andrea, but for the daughter she could have been. I mourned the relationship we never had. Week 4 brought the silence before the storm. Tuesday, November 5th. Andrea formally accepted the plea deal. Her allocution, the part where she would have to confess in open court, was scheduled for November 15th. Thursday, October 31st. Dr. Patricia Morales' medical license was permanently revoked. She faced a separate criminal trial for Medicaid fraud. The federal prosecutor estimated 5 to 10 years in prison. Saturday, November 2nd. Chase and I had dinner on the penthouse balcony. He told me he'd started seeing someone, a woman named Sarah, a pediatric nurse he'd met at a charity event. "I want you to meet her," he said. Then quieter, "And I'd like you to be my best man, someday, when we get there." I said yes. It was the first time in years I'd felt hope for something other than survival. Sunday, November 3rd. I wrote in my journal a new habit from the therapy sessions Chase had quietly arranged for me. The entry read, "4 weeks ago I thought my life was over. Today I realized it's just beginning." I looked out at the Scottsdale city lights and thought about Paula, my late wife's best friend, who Chase said had been asking about me. I thought about the volunteer work Evelyn had mentioned, an elder abuse hotline that needed people who'd been through it. And I felt something I hadn't felt in months, calm. Not happiness yet, but the absence of fear. On November 3rd, exactly 4 weeks after Andrea's arrest, I wrote in my journal, "I think I'm ready to forgive. Not her, not yet, maybe not ever. But myself. For staying silent so long, for believing her lies, for thinking I deserved it." The next morning, Chase knocked on my door with 2 cups of coffee and a crazy idea. "One, Dad," he said, "how would you feel about volunteering at the elder abuse hotline? They need people who've been through it." I looked at him, this man who wasn't my blood, but had become my family, and I realized my story wasn't over. It was just beginning. While Andrea's life was falling apart in a jail cell, mine was being rebuilt one small, ordinary moment at a time. And I learned that healing isn't dramatic. It's quiet. It's boring. It's beautiful. The same 4 weeks that dismantled Andrea's world, October 10th through November 3rd, were the weeks that taught me how to live again. Not survive. Live. Dr. Alan Brooks referred me to Dr. Samuel Garrett, a geriatric specialist in Scottsdale. My blood pressure was 160/95. Blood work showed mild malnutrition markers for chronic stress disrupted sleep patterns. "Your body kept score of the abuse," Dr. Garrett told me. "Now we teach it safety." He prescribed medication and referred me to a nutritionist named Linda Foster. Chase helped me move into the penthouse guest suite, a space with a view of the McDowell Mountains, a bed with clean sheets, a closet that was mine and mine alone. It was the first time in years I'd had a room that felt like my own. Evelyn Cross and a financial planner named Nathan Cross walked me through my finances. The conservatorship had never been filed. My assets were 100% mine, $340,000 in retirement accounts, a $280,000 house in Tempe with no mortgage, and $2,800 a month in pension income. "You're financially stable," Nathan said. "We just need to protect what's yours." Nathan proposed renting out the Tempe house for $2,200 a month, keeping my retirement accounts intact. opening a new checking account with Chase as a temporary co-signer to prevent fraud. I had my first therapy session with Dr. Rebecca Stone, a trauma-informed therapist who specialized in elder abuse. 50 minutes. I described 18 months of manipulation, gaslighting, theft, and public humiliation. I broke down twice. Dr. Stone handed me tissues and said, "You survived. Now we help you thrive." Margaret Campbell visited with homemade lasagna. We sat on the penthouse couch, ate together, and watched Jeopardy! I laughed at a contestant who missed an obvious answer the first time I'd laughed in months. I walked around Chase's neighborhood. 20 minutes. The desert sunset painted the sky orange and pink. I thought, I'm still here. I'm still alive. Routine became my anchor. Breakfast at 7, walk at 8, therapy Thursdays at 2. It sounds boring, but boring felt like peace. Chase invited me to lunch with his girlfriend Sarah Brennan, a 34-year-old pediatric nurse. She asked about my aerospace engineering career the first time in years someone had asked about my work instead of my problems. I told her about the projects I'd worked on, the satellites I'd helped launch, and for an hour I felt like myself again. I joined an online support group for elder abuse survivors. It met on Zoom every Friday at 7 p.m. 8 participants, ages 58 to 81. I shared my story. I heard theirs, and I realized I'm not alone. My blood pressure improved. 138/88. I'd gained 4 pounds healthy weight. During my third therapy session, Dr. Stone asked, "What do you want your life to look like 6 months from now?" I said, "I don't know, but I want to help people like me." Chase had mentioned a volunteer opportunity. Arizona Adult Protective Services needed advocates for their crisis hotline. People who'd experienced elder abuse. Training started December 2nd. I had dinner on the penthouse balcony with Chase and Sarah. Chase asked me to be his best man at his future wedding. I said yes. This man had saved my life, and now he was asking me to be part of his. I started journaling and wrote my first entry. 4 weeks ago, I thought my life was over. Today, I realized it's just beginning. I looked out at the Scottsdale city lights that night and felt something I hadn't felt in years: hope. Not happiness, not yet, but the belief that happiness was possible. On November 3rd, I looked at the volunteer application on my laptop screen. Arizona Adult Protective Services Crisis Hotline Advocate. I thought about the 18 months I'd spent silent, isolated, ashamed. Then I thought about the 8 people in my support group. About Margaret, who'd spoken up when no one else did. About Chase, who'd saved me when I couldn't save myself. I clicked Submit Application. Because maybe, just maybe, my pain could become someone else's hope. They say you cannot choose your family. In November 2024, I learned that sometimes the family you choose is the only one that truly stays, and sometimes the family you believed was gone forever can still find its way back. 3 weeks after submitting my volunteer application to Arizona Adult Protective Services, my world slowly began filling with people again. I had started a 4-week training program, my blood pressure was stable, and I was seeing Dr. Stone twice a week. Andrea's sentencing was set for December 20th, a date I tried not to dwell on. November became less about waiting for that day, and more about rebuilding what I thought had been lost. On Sunday, November 10th, my phone rang with a Tucson number I did not recognize. I almost ignored it. The voice on the other end was older, rougher, but unmistakable. It was Hank, my brother. We had not spoken in 12 years. He told me he owed me an apology for believing Andrea and for failing to call when she tried to manipulate him. I felt my chest tighten as I asked if he wanted to visit. 2 days later, he drove 120 miles to Scottsdale. We met in Chase's lobby and exchanged an awkward hug, unsure how to bridge more than a decade of silence. Hank brought an old photo album from our Air Force childhood 8 moves before I turned 18. We flipped through pictures of Dad in uniform, Mom outside identical base housing, and 2 gap-toothed boys holding fish beside some forgotten lake. He admitted he should have called when Dad died. I confessed I should have reached out when Mom passed. Pride had cost us years. When we found a photo of the 4 of us beside a Christmas tree in Germany, Hank said we were a family once. I told him we still were. The following Sunday, I taught him chess, our father's favorite game. We agreed to monthly visits, and as he hugged me goodbye, I realized I had been mourning someone who was never truly gone, only lost. Reconnection did not stop there. On November 14th, Margaret invited me to Thanksgiving dinner. I had not celebrated since my wife died in 2016, 8 years of empty holidays. She insisted I would not spend it alone. 2 days later, I visited her home in Tempe and met her daughter Emily and 4-year-old grandson Lucas, who proudly showed me his toy rocket. I explained how fins stabilize flight, and he listened like I was explaining the universe. The next week, Margaret visited my penthouse with a homemade pumpkin pie. We drank coffee on the balcony as sunrise painted the McDowell Mountains gold. She told me she had cared for her husband through Alzheimer's and understood isolation. When she saw Andrea hit me at that party, she recognized the same abuse her own sister once inflicted on their mother. She refused to stay silent again. I told her she had saved me. In many ways, she became the steady presence I had always needed. At Chase's suggestion, I also reached out to Paula Martinez, my late wife's best friend of 30 years. Andrea had told Paula I did not want contact and had blocked her number, something I never knew. I sent a simple message asking if we could talk. She replied within minutes. We met at Scottsdale Civic Center Park and talked for 90 minutes. Paula explained she believed I was moving to assisted living and wanted no visitors. I told her the truth about the manipulation and arrest. We both cried. She said my wife would be proud that I survived and fought back. A few days later, she brought photo albums to the penthouse. We studied wedding pictures from 1985 vacations and images of Andrea as a smiling child. Looking at a photo of my wife laughing on a San Diego beach while pregnant, I remembered joy instead of loss. Meanwhile, I completed my training and earned certification as a crisis hotline advocate. On November 26th, I worked my first supervised shift and took 3 calls from older adults facing theft, isolation, and physical abuse. I listened, provided referrals, coordinated emergency responses, and stayed on the line until each caller felt safe. Afterward, I sat in my car and cried not from sadness, but from purpose. My supervisor offered me a permanent 8-hour weekly volunteer role and later asked if I would consider public speaking about elder abuse prevention. I thought about the crowd who once watched me suffer and the few who finally stood up. Then I thought about the callers who said they believed they were alone. I told her yes, because if my story can spare even one person that silence, it is worth telling. 6 months after the night that changed everything, I stood before 300 people at the Arizona Elder Abuse Prevention Conference and said words I once believed would destroy me. My name is Lance Griffin. I am 64 years old, and my daughter nearly destroyed me. I had completed volunteer training in November, reconciled with my brother Hank, reconnected with Paula and Margaret, and found purpose on the APS crisis hotline. Andrea had been sentenced in December. Now, in mid-April, at the Arizona Biltmore in Phoenix, I faced a room of social workers, law enforcement officers, medical professionals, and survivors ready to tell the truth. Stage lights blurred the back rows, but I saw the front clearly. Chase and Sarah sat together. Margaret with tissues in hand, Hank steady and silent. Paula watching with the same loyalty she had shown for 30 years, Karen Delgado from APS nearby, and 12 guests from the birthday party who had testified at the trial. I described October 5th, the celebration, with 200 guests, the Cartier watch I saved 6 months to buy, and the slap that sent me to the ground with glass in my hand and blood on stone. I spoke about 18 months of isolation, financial control, and gaslighting. In March 2024, Andrea convinced me to add her to my bank account, stole more than $40,000, and persuaded me I was losing my mind. I explained the conservatorship fraud, the bribed psychiatrist, the lies that eroded my identity, and how Chase gathered evidence, found a lawyer, and helped unravel every deception. I shared the outcome, Dr. Patricia Morales serving 64 months in federal prison for falsifying evaluations. Andrea sentenced to 30 months with parole eligibility after 18, and the long road of therapy and recovery that followed. Since December, I had volunteered more than 250 hours, helped 47 callers, coordinated 12 investigations, and assisted in 3 emergency rescues. I told them I was not seeking sympathy, but hoping that someone in that room would recognize the next victim sooner than I had. The applause rose into a standing ovation. 14 people approached me afterward with their stories, and an elderly woman squeezed my hand and thanked me for speaking what she had never dared to say. When I saw Chase wiping his eyes, pride replaced every ounce of shame. At lunch, I stood on the terrace reflecting on how far we had come. Andrea was serving her sentence in minimum security at Perryville after pleading guilty to elder abuse and theft. She owed $113,400 in restitution and would face probation therapy, wage garnishment, and a permanent restraining order after release. Dr. Morales was incarcerated in California, her license revoked, and restitution ordered. Chase's divorce finalized in February. Thanks to the prenup's fraud clause, Andrea received nothing. He kept the Paradise Valley home, earned a promotion to regional CEO, and became engaged to Sarah with an October wedding planned. He insisted I remain in his penthouse because, as he said, I was family. Hank visited monthly, and in January we stood together at our parents' graves for the first time in years. Margaret shared weekly dinners, and now volunteered beside me on the hotline. Paula and I visited my late wife's grave each month and co-facilitated a grief group she introduced me to. My health stabilized, my finances recovered, and my calendar filled with support groups, volunteer hours, and speaking engagements. I was no longer isolated. I was connected. That evening, back on the penthouse balcony at sunset, we gathered for dinner. Chase grilled, Sarah prepared salad. Margaret brought dessert, Paula poured wine, and Hank set up a chessboard. When Sarah asked how the speech felt, I told her it was terrifying and freeing at once, as if I had reclaimed my life. Chase called me Dad and said he was proud. For the first time, I told them I was proud of myself. As city lights flickered below and laughter drifted from inside, I understood that I would never be the silent man who endured abuse again. Andrea had taken time, money, and dignity, but she had not taken my future. I stepped back into the warmth of chosen family, knowing that this moment, this life rebuilt from truth, was more than enough. And to you listening to this family story, remember this. I spent 18 months believing I deserved the abuse because Andrea was my blood. But God doesn't measure family by DNA. He measures it by love, protection, and sacrifice. Chase Harrington, the man who saved me, proved that family story isn't written in genetics. It's written in choices. Looking back at my own family story, I see the mistakes clearly now. I stayed silent when I should have spoken. I believed lies when I should have questioned. I isolated myself when I should have reached out. Don't be like me. Don't wait until you're bleeding on a patio floor to ask for help. The warning signs were there, the gaslighting, the financial control, the isolation. I ignored them all. If you're living through something similar, understand this. Dad revenge isn't what you think it is. Real dad revenge isn't about anger or retaliation. It's about survival, about reclaiming your dignity, about protecting the next victim. My dad revenge was standing in front of 300 people and saying, "This happened to me and it can happen to you." That's the only revenge worth having. God gave me a second chance. Chase gave me a family. And I'm giving you this warning: abuse doesn't announce itself. It creeps in slowly, wrapped in love and manipulation. Trust your instincts. Document everything, and never ever believe you deserve it. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment below, sharing your thoughts. Your voice matters. Hit the subscribe button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Together we can break the silence. Thank you for staying with me until the end. A note to our listeners: the stories that follow may contain fictionalized elements created for educational purposes. If you prefer different content, feel free to explore other options on our channel.
보시고, 네, 다들 새해 복 많이 받으세요. 보기 좋구나, 얘들아. 서로 그렇게 덕담 나누면서 싸우지 말고, 알겠지? 다들 착하게 살아. 그래야지 잘 되지, 알겠지? 림빵 오빠도 왔네. 어서오세요. 본가 어딘데요, 오빠? 두종구? 구미? 어디서 가는데? 와, 맛있게 먹으니까 진짜 좋다. 내 사랑 동은이는 뭐야? 김천 김밥 전국? 오호. 아, 맞다. 덕비 그거라고 했지? 덕비 대구라고 했나? 아, 또 좀 보내주고 싶다. 내 냉장고에 아직 많은데. 난 먹기 싫어. 야, 덕비야. 림빵 오빠가 훨씬 니보다 나이 많을걸? 덕비 저 싸가지 없는 놈. 햇별 언니 뭘 보냐고요? 여기 잠깐 사람 구경하고 있었어. 여기 쭈그려 앉아서.